Greetings to all of you from Dubai, and a very, very warm welcome to everyone joining us from different regions, different locations today. So, as you all know, that Asian Council of Science Editors has been proudly serving the scholarly publishing community for more than a decade now. And throughout this whole journey, we have focused on creating meaningful platforms where editors, researchers, and professionals can engage, they can learn, and they can lead the conversation that shape our current industry that's evolving faster than we expected in the previous years. For those who don't know me, I'm Maryam Sayab, Director of Communication at Asian Council of Science Editors and your moderator for today's session. We are very, very excited to bring you another webinar today that is developed and curated with that very mission in our mind. At ACSE, these type of sessions are not just like events on a calendar, they are part of our ongoing commitment to equip our community across Asia and beyond with somehow bringing the knowledge and the tools that's needed to navigate the complex as well as the evolving challenges in publishing community. Today, I would say that we turn our attention to one of the most pressing topics of our time, the responsible use of artificial intelligence in scholarly publishing, whether it starts from peer review to authorship. Artificial intelligence is transforming the whole landscape. And with this age, I think it's crucial that we discuss not just its potential, but also the boundaries, the ethics, and the accountability that comes with it. We are very privileged to have an expert panel today, including Martin Delahunty, Jonathan Lee, Adam Day, and Rick Lee with us today to guide this conversation. And to lead this session ahead, I am delighted to hand it over to Martin Delahunty, our respected voice in STM Publishing. He's the former global director at Springer Nature, current president of European Medical Writer Association, and a valued member of our ACSE advisory cabinet. Martin, thank you for joining us today. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Maryam, and thank you for that kind introduction, and welcome everybody to what hopefully will be a good interactive session. So firstly, I'd just like to welcome our guest speakers for today. So we have Jonathan Lee, who's Global Publications Learning Community Lead with Takeda in Singapore, and also is Asia Pacific Trustee for the International Society of Medical Publication Professionals. Then we have Adam Day, who is CEO and co-founder of Clear Skies. And Clear Skies is an industry leader in paper mill detection, so very much on point for our discussion today with regards to ethics and responsible publishing practices. And finally, we have Dr. Rick Lee, who's General Manager with World Scientific Publishing, based in Singapore, a family-run books and journals publisher and the largest publisher in the Asia Pacific region. So welcome to our speakers. I will just briefly overview our program for today, just to take you through our agenda. So we'll begin with a AI landscape and current applications perspective from myself. I'll hand over to Jonathan to talk about industry perspectives and governance within industry. Then Adam will cover AI and research integrity and detection. And then Dr. Lee will cover publisher implementations and strategic perspectives. And we've allowed a good time for an interactive panel discussion and for audience participation. So again, we will welcome the opportunity to hear from you throughout our program today. So let me share my screen and begin. So I'm just going to share my entire screen, and hopefully you can all see my presentation. So I'm going to talk about the broader AI landscape and current applications. So just give you, again, my disclosures. I'm an independent publishing consultant. I'm president for the European Medical Writers Association, a former secretary for the International Society of Medical Publication Professionals, former global director at Springer Nature, and a current advisory cabinet member for the Asian Council of Science Editors. So clearly, AI use in publishing and publications is no longer a novelty. If we take ourselves back to 2022, in November 2022, when ChatGPT was announced, most of us in the audience today would be relatively unaware about the application of AI, and particularly generative AI, but it's no longer a novelty. And we can see from the prominent publishers in the field, from Elsevier, Wiley, and Springer Nature, all are very much involved now, deeply involved in developing artificial intelligence application solutions and developing their business along that line. I want to talk about the risks just to begin with associated with the use of AI tools, because then that leads us into thinking about the impact on research integrity, ethics. So what are the risks? Well, for those of you who are becoming more aware around generative AI, we're aware of the challenges around confidentiality of your input, the explainability of these systems. So it is concerning that many of us, and also the technology providers, are unable to fully explain how generative AI works. So that remains a problem. We know about the incorrect or misleading outputs from inputs. We are concerned about the ownership of output in relation to copyright, intellectual property, and privacy. We know that when you're using generative AI, you can have standard prompts and non-unique outputs. So every time you get an output, it will be slightly different to the next. We have this challenge around privacy infringement and the training of data and how the data is used. We have also a concern around biased or offensive outputs, which is continuing. So we have these underlying ethical considerations in AI, which apply to then scholarly and academic publishing. And it's useful just to consider that AI is not a single technology, but rather an evolving concept that comprises multiple different tools. It was developed originally for marketing purposes rather than for the more demanding and strict fields that we are involved in, scientific and academic research publications. And while some generative AI tools are highly supervised by human beings, other tools such as ChatGPT and Google Gemini are largely and increasingly automated without human intervention, which makes it difficult to monitor how these outputs are generated from a given input. And generative AI tools are trained to produce plausible outputs rather than facts. And in this way, it can be thought of as highly complex autocomplete. So we have to be concerned around that. And the key questions include who should be accountable if a system causes harm, or who should take responsibility for actions that can't be explained. Is it the AI company? Is it the user? Or is it the decision maker? And underlying this, we have a need for caution around the claims of cost saving, efficiency, enhanced capabilities made by these AI tools, both in the short and long term. And these issues are being highlighted all the time. And the users of AI technology should be aware of the downside of these tools from an ethical standpoint, in addition to the benefits that they bring. And that's the context of our discussion here today. So clearly we are looking at benefits and implied benefits, the impact on editorial and publishing workflows. We have the automation of tedious and repetitive tasks, which is fantastic. That might include data extraction, citation management, or formatting, etc. We have an enhanced precision and consistency. So these AI-powered tools can generate grammar and spell checking programs, again, in any documentation. And we have improved workflow efficiencies. So the expectation is that we can streamline the entire editorial process, making it more efficient. And in some cases, AI and generative AI too can be incredibly helpful in complying with regulatory requirements. So that is particularly prevalent in clinical trial publications and pharmaceutical related publications, for example, but other areas may require certain compliance with standards, and generative AI can be very helpful in that respect. And we want to see quality assurance. So we'll come on to talk about Clear Skies and the work that Adam's doing and other publishers are doing. But clearly AI tools have the potential of aiding in plagiarism detection and content analysis, which will help in maintaining the integrity of the published research. And we can identify potential issues early in the editorial process. And lastly, the confidentiality in the peer review process. This is an ongoing and a developing discussion. And so whilst AI can improve the quality of feedback in peer review reports, and I'm sure many of you in the audience today are reviewers, and I'm sure many of you are already using generative AI to help in terms of your evaluation and review reports, it's important to understand the need to uphold confidentiality when sharing data. So another big question that we need to ask is AI or not AI? That is the question in relation to publications that are coming through to journals, and journal editors will be mostly concerned about this, as well as publishers, whether the work has been generated in part or in the main by a generative AI tool. And the concern here then is that AI is pouring fuel on the existing challenges around research integrity, for example, paper mills, and that's conflating an existing problem that has been around for many decades. So it's nothing new. Paper mills are nothing new. It's just the fact that AI is amplifying and conflating an existing problem. And so how have journal editors and big journals responded to the development and maybe the concerns around generative AI? I would say it's mainly been defensive. So Nature very early on made a statement that authors using large language models, generative AI, should document their use in their methods and acknowledgement sections. Science similarly wants a disclosure of the use of AI-generated text. And AI-generated text without proper citation could be considered plagiarism. And we know, as those of us involved in academic and scholarly publishing, that attributing citation and references is incredibly important. Without that, we don't have a factual-based, evidence-based publishing ecosystem. The Lancet, again, very clear about AI tools only being used to improve readability in language. And the International Committee of Medical Journal Editors, as an example, again, recommends authors must disclose AI use and remain responsible for the accuracy, integrity, and originality of the work. From publishers' perspective, we are now seeing major publisher AI partnerships evolving. So in the press releases that you may be following from the major publishers, you will see, for example, Taylor & Francis and their parent company Informa announcing a partnership with Microsoft, an initial deal of $10 million. And the parent company is expected to develop further partnerships to the benefit of $75 million. And we've got additional partnerships confirmed, and very, very immediately on our desks in the last week or so is that Wiley announced a partnership with Anthropic, which produces the product Claude AI. And their aim is to accelerate responsible AI integration across their scholarly research content. Oxford University Press similarly, and Cambridge University Press have indicated their willingness to engage with AI companies and to develop partnerships and business partnerships with those companies. So this is very much the development that we are seeing now. And so how should publishers approach, for example, author rights? And we've got various strategies on consent and compensation in these relationships. So again, it's very nice to see publishers such as Cambridge University Press talking about having an author-friendly approach, having an opt-in rather than an opt-out, which is very important, and fair remuneration for, and this is for book and journal authors where that's relevant. Similarly, Oxford University Press focus on responsible development of AI, and Taylor & Francis and Wiley, again, are looking at areas such as standard contract interpretation, so licenses to publish, copyright licenses to publish that authors will signed to include then references and the ability to opt in or opt out for AI use and AI training. So we are moving forward very fast. We're also looking at the development of AI tools to support research integrity, which is fantastic. And Springer Nature developed a tool called Geppetto. It detects AI-generated content and analyzes text consistently by sections and the potential to identify fake papers before they're published. And they also have an image analysis tool, Snapshot, to detect image duplication and manipulations. And so what you will see, I think, more prevalent is publishing companies at all levels developing their own proprietary tools, working in collaboration with AI companies. And in this case, Springer Nature very nicely donated this tool to the STM Integrity Hub for industry-wide use. So we have this industry-wide adoption and focus on editorial process enhancement. We have publishers implementing their AI tools, Springer Nature around automated editorial quality checks, Wiley around research assisted peer review support, and Elsevier developing generative AI-powered editorial tools. So the objectives here, again, are to try and speed up the peer review process, to improve the quality of research, reduce editor workload, and to enhance submission screening. And so what we will also want to see are standards and industry standardization of AI policies being developed. And there's an initiative called Kangaroo, which is a Committee on Publication Ethics-backed initiative. Its goal is to collaborate with hundreds of thousands of academics to standardize AI-related guidance across the industry. And I think it's very healthy that we work collaboratively together with all stakeholders to develop industry-wide guidance on responsible use of AI. A challenge is that potentially publishers are going their own way. It is definitely an increasingly confusing landscape for authors. And there's, again, this need for unified industry standards. And we may be seeing also a bit of author resistance and ethical concerns, some opposition from the academic community. You may have seen the open letter movement, where prominent authors have signed a declaration that they don't want to see books being created by machines. So these author concerns center around lack of consultation, lack of compensation for their copyrighted work where that's appropriate, exploitation of unpaid academic labor, and loss of intellectual property control. And the financial and market dynamics, clearly that the commercial and business drivers are there, that's fueling the advancement and rapid advancement and deployment of AI tools. It's a big potential market, and there's an estimated $19 billion worth of business to be had around AI and licensing content to train AI models, as an example. So what would be the future outlook and implications? What's next for academic publishing? What I would say in the short term, we're going to be seeing more publisher AI partnerships, and we're already seeing that. Enhanced detection tools, which is very, very positive. A move to more standardized author guidelines, and those guidelines being very clear about authors' content being used or not used to train AI models, and having this opt-in framework rather than opt-out. And then the longer term implications are we are definitely going to see a fundamental shift in publishing economics. So this is a huge disruption of the whole academic and scholarly publishing industry, as well as the publishing ecosystem. And I think we'll see new models for author compensation, and we're talking books and journals. More AI-assisted peer review becoming standard, which is very, very positive. We know the bottlenecks around peer review and the challenges there, and potential industry consolidation because of this economical, the economics and the demands of the economics of transitioning towards more AI business from publishers. So what about then the key stakeholders? Well, what would be key questions to ask, and we can explore those through our session today. Is how can publishers balance revenue opportunities with author relations? What level of AI integration is optimal? How to maintain research integrity standards, which is upmost and foremost in our minds. And for authors, should you opt in to AI licensing deals? Have you the ability to opt in or opt out? How do you protect your intellectual property rights? Are the compensation models being offered fair? And then for institutions, how do you support your faculty in this transition? How do you educate and train the appropriate and responsible use of AI for researchers considering publications? What policies need updating? How to ensure ultimately research quality? And then what about you as journal editors? Well, how to effectively integrate AI detection tools, for example, into your editorial workflows. Can we come on to talk? Adam will cover that, and Dr. Lee as well. And what AI usage policies should be enforced for author submissions. How to maintain editorial quality while maintaining AI-assisted peer review. And when human oversight should override AI recommendations. And how to train your editorial staff on the use of new AI tools and policies. So there's a lot to consider there. For publishers, I would be suggesting as best practice that we're looking at more continued transparent communication with authors about AI deals, opt-in frameworks rather than opt-out, fair compensation models, robust integrity tools, and for authors to be aware of reviewing contracts for AI-related clauses, looking out for those, staying informed about publishers' policies that will clearly change quite rapidly. Consider collective action through academic organizations, so where you're involved in representative bodies to ensure that you have a voice, and to engage in policy discussions where that is appropriate for you. And for journal editors to develop clear policies for submissions and disclosures, implement AI detection tools, train your editorial staff again, and establish transparent workflows for handling any AI flagged submissions, and create author guidance on acceptable and responsible use of AI. So we are looking at a new reality, and just to finish, the key messages would be that AI integration is inevitable and accelerating at pace. In the industry, in the publishing industry, revenue models are transforming. Author rights should remain contested and need to be consistent, so we need to keep an oversight of that. Research integrity tools are absolutely essential. So on the dark side, unfortunately, of the rapid deployment of generative AI tools is again pouring the fuel on the existing paper mills and fraudulent activity. So research integrity tools will continue and increasingly be incredibly important. And collaboration in this dramatic transformative change for all stakeholders in the publishing ecosystem, collaboration is essential, and we need to find ways in which we facilitate that. And ACSE is a great organization in terms of us having that opportunity to facilitate a collaboration, and we're doing that through our discussion today. So I leave you with a question that I posed to Claude AI today on what Claude as a generative AI tool thought. And it said, as an AI assistant, I want to acknowledge that responsible AI in scholarly publishing isn't about replacing human judgment. It's about enhancing it. AI works best when used transparently with clear disclosure and as a complement to your expertise in critical thinking. The fact that we're all here today engaging in questions of ethics and implementation shows the scholarly community is approaching this thoughtfully. That collective commitment to responsibility will ensure AI serves scholarship rather than undermining it. Now, I really hope that Anthropic, Claude's company, and the other companies actually follow through on that. So thank you for your attention. I will stop sharing now, and then we have a little time for some questions.
Yes, very, very good afternoon, Mr. Martin. That presentation was wonderful. That was very awesome. I mean, that is very full of, I think, knowledge and logics and what we call the arguments, and you have explained and elaborated in quite detail. That was very nice and very good. My question is this one: what do you think about biasness? I think, is there any transparency in just like a publishing an articles and all this in journals, and what as an editor, as an author, as an institutions, what do you think about the biasness? I think in the system, do you think AI really helps in just like a removing or just like a dealing it with fairness or dealing it with impartial? So what do you think? Just please, I need your guidance, please.
It's a great question about the inherent bias within the publishing process, and particularly the peer review process. So we understand that there is an inherent bias. There's and that's an existing problem. Can AI help? Yes. Currently, is AI helping in that respect? I think not, because I think the programming and training of the current AI programs also introduces a bias and a lack of recognition of diversity by all respects within the scientific and academic publishing ecosystem. So I'd be turning the question around to the generative AI companies and challenging them to create systems that are more diverse, more equitable, and recognize the pre-existing problems that we've had within the peer review system, which is underlying bias. And the opportunity is there. However, I think at the moment the tools that are being provided are automatically biased, because those mainly programming the algorithms are biased in themselves. So we need more transparency with those companies. And this is the kind of discussion, great question, because we need to discuss this and then decide collectively, how do we push against the companies that are developing the tools and say, this is a demand from us. We need more equitable and diverse approach to the algorithms that are being designed.
Thank you very much, sir. May God bless you all. Thank you very much for your positive and very great response.
Thank you. So in the interest of time, I'd like to move on. So I wanted to hand over to Jonathan Lee. Again, Jonathan is with Takeda Pharmaceuticals in Singapore. And so Jonathan's going to give us a perspective from industry. Over to you, Jonathan.
All right. Thanks very much, Martin. And thank you, everyone, for the opportunity to the ACSE for the opportunity to present. I have been asked to talk a bit about industry perspectives and governance. So really for today, couple of disclosures up front, and more importantly, that these are my own views and not necessarily those of my employer or ISMPP, the International Society for Medical Publication Professionals. I think for the purpose of my section, at least when I'm talking about industry governance, I'm going to refer specifically to the pharmaceutical publishing industry, just because that's the environment that I'm working in, and try and give you some perspectives from our point of view, because it's a very heavily regulated space. I think more so than academic publishing, and that introduces a unique set of challenges, I feel. Some have been discussed by Martin, but they take on a slightly different perspective when it comes to the pharmaceutical industry. So I think let's start, up front. I think we can all agree that one of the key things that drives interest in AI, particularly in the industry, is thinking about the promise of efficiency and cost and time savings more than anything else. I think Martin talked a bit about it at the beginning, how you can, get AI to take over repetitive or mundane tasks and really speed up certain processes. And I think this applies as well to the pharmaceutical publishing industry, right? We really want to be able to get data out to the target audience so it can go to, to the readers as soon as possible. So this presents, I think, some unique situations that we need to acknowledge and kind of figure out. AI is advancing at such a fast pace. The reality is that industry, as Martin also talked about in his he's actually covered quite a few points. I may not have to talk about very much for my section, but AI is progressing so fast that the reality is we will always be playing catch up in terms of the governance and the professional standards, just because we don't know what we don't know. Right? When AI first came out, everyone thought, oh, it's going to be writing publications for us. And then we realized as we started to use it, like, no, it's not working out so well. Right? So I think on the governance phase as well, it's really a case of waiting for people to try this experiment with things, see how it works, so we can understand how it can potentially be used before we can start to develop, frameworks and professional standards. So the International Society for Medical Publication Professionals, ISMPP, has a position statement on the use of AI. But beyond this, there aren't really any formal industry guidelines in place. From the pharmaceutical company perspective, there are several big pharma companies that have started exploring how to incorporate AI into their workflows, whether it's getting the AI system to develop maybe a first draft of the methods or the results from a clinical study report, or whether it's getting the AI system to develop a whole first draft, or maybe not a first draft, and maybe we put in an outline and get AI to move that into like a fully written draft. Right. But I think the key thing here is that whatever, avenues are being explored, there's always a human in the loop, because, some of the comments that have come through is there's a lot of bias and inaccuracy in AI. And I think all pharma companies at least have acknowledged that, because of the concerns, because of the need to be very, very accurate and transparent with all the data that we publish, we always need to have a human in the loop to make sure that, what goes out is of the right quality, of high quality and accurate. You don't want to have decimal points suddenly moving around in the table. That's going to be a very big difference. So when it comes to medical publishing perspectives on AI integration, I think a lot of the discussion, that we're having is really on the use of generative AI in publishing, whether we can use the generative AI models for publication drafting. There are now concerns as well for peer reviewers using AI for reviews, because I think one of the key things with AI is data security and data privacy, right? Once it goes into, if it's not an in-house built AI system, as most pharma companies have, if it goes into like ChatGPT, there's no control over that, right? It means any unpublished data you put in, whether you're developing a draft or whether you're a peer reviewer, that data is now out there for AI to use. And I mean, does that become first disclosure or not? It's very hard to say, right? And this leads to, all the different compliance and regulatory considerations from a pharmaceutical perspective, because, there's IP, there's intellectual property to protect, right? You don't want to have an accidental release of data before the Congress embargo or before it gets published in a manuscript. How do we manage this? I think this is still an evolving space, because as AI progresses, people are also getting creative in how they use it. I mean, for the same reasons, peer reviewers, it's a very important job, but at the same time, we're hard pressed for time, right? So maybe we try and speed this up a bit. So I think a lot of how the field progresses will rely quite heavily on what journal policies come up on for AI usage, because depending on what the journals, where the journals stand, if they say we don't allow AI, well, that's probably going to take certain things out. And I'm sure Adam will talk a bit more about how we can identify some of this. But I think the other key point is about biases in AI, because we assume that AI kind of knows everything, but it's really dependent on how it's trained, right? So if you have a lot of data from perhaps Western cultures going in, or very Western assumptions or considerations, right? Particularly because in Asia, it's different, right? The culture is different. The way we approach things is different. The way we think about things is a bit different. So depending on the AI system you use, could you be introducing such cultural biases as well? And I think the other piece is that AI is trained on what is already known, and science deals with discovery of the unknown. So there may be elements that we can leverage, but at the end of the day, I feel, AI is not going to be helping us to publish things because, well, not fully, maybe certain aspects, but because everything we publish is something new. It's something that was not previously known before. And I don't think AI is at a level yet where it can manage that. But let me switch gear very quickly to think about some other aspect of AI. I think particularly in Asia, where most of us don't speak English as a first language. If you've had to learn English as a second language, it can be really hard because you speak in one language, you think in one language, you've got certain phrases and expressions in one language, but to try and translate that into English, sometimes it doesn't work so well, right? So my question then is, have we started to explore the AI-powered translation instead in Asia or even Latin America, rather than just think about the generative AI aspects? Because I think, in the field of scientific publications, there is a bit of inequity if you're not a native English speaker, because you may struggle to get your ideas out, and sometimes that makes it harder to kind of fully articulate certain things. Or if you get, peer reviewers who expect a certain level of language proficiency or grammar, and they come back and say, no, this is not good enough, please go back and review your language, right? And the bigger question is because we can't fully articulate some ideas sometimes, how much insights are we losing from authors who may not speak English as a first language, right? And I personally feel that the AI powered translation has the potential to be a leveler for all of us, and it's something to think about. So with that, I know I started off with the idea that a lot of people are exploring AI as for cost savings and efficiency. But for us, I offer this alternative paradigm, right? Can we consider using AI as a tool to address inequity in publications? Because I think it's in terms of usage of AI for language editing and translation, we're much closer to understanding how it works, how we can address it, how we can leverage it versus generative AI. And more importantly, it gives us a way to help, make sure that more ideas, more scientific thought can be shared and captured and really feed into the scientific discourse that we want to see in the field. So with that, thank you very much for your time. Special thanks to the people below, Blair and Julie, Yaming, and Fran, for the insights which helped to shape this presentation. And happy to take a couple of questions. Martin?
Thank you, Jonathan. That's fantastic, and as you say, really important to have a different perspective, particularly around how the tool can address inequality in publications. So I think that's a really fresh, great perspective that I'm not hearing enough of. So thank you for that. Shall we just take one question again in the interest of time? If we have one immediate question.
Sir, Mr. Martin, if you allow me, can I ask, please?
Yep, please go ahead.
Okay, please. And Mr. Martin, thank you very much for your kindness. Give me permission. Okay, my question is this one, AI. Do you think, before that, what is my question to you, sir, your greatness, that is there any, what is the neutrality or unbiasedness? But now my question is this one, is it just like going to be over-reliance on technology rather to focus more on human being efforts and working, rather to trust on the human being efforts? We are more trusting on technology. So that's what my concern is this one. Please, I request to Mr. Jonathan, who has given a wonderful presentation, very logical. So please, Mr. Jonathan, please little bit give your feedback about that one. Because I am a professor of education from Pakistan, Facilitator Superior University. And because we are from Asia and we are independent and little bit you can say that struggling country. And we are suffering and facing these crises and problems too much.
So yeah, I think that's a very good and very relevant question, because it is a real concern that if we start to rely on technology too much, basic things kind of get forgotten. Or if you start off in the industry as a young writer and you rely on AI to do all that for you, you don't actually develop the skills. It's something that is just, I think, part of technological progress as well. So there needs to be a balance, and I think we do need to have education around not getting overly reliant on technology, because writing is as much of a skill as an art. And if you're not practicing it yourself and relying on technology, well, then I think you're gonna lose out in the long term, because you're never gonna develop that muscle, so to speak.
That's right. Yes. Thank you very much, Mr. Jonathan. And one more request to Mr. Martin and Mr. Jonathan. Please, give me so many people. They are asking to share slides, please, for our just like so much convenience that we can also use in our lecture in, I think, in upcoming time. This is a humble request to both of you.
Let me just have one moment for all of the participants. We will be taking question and answer session right after the presentation to keep the presentations on time. So we will take next two presentation and then we will go with Q&A with a proper session, giving opportunity to all of the attendees. Thank you,
Okay,
Dr. ask for the question. Thank you so much. Martin,
Did-
over to you. We will take two next presentations, and then we
That-
will open Q&A for all of the participants who have questions and go with Q&A session.
Perfect. Thanks, Maryam. So well, I'll hand over immediately to, thanks, Jonathan, for an excellent presentation. Let's hand over to Adam. Over to you.
Okay, can we all see that?
That's good, Adam. Thank you.
Okay. So I'm Adam from Clear Skies. We are now a multi-award-winning startup, three of them now. We were the first company to use AI for paper mill detection. And it's been quite interesting to kind of be the first in the space and see how things have kind of changed around that space as time has gone on, especially in such a fast-moving field as AI. One of the things that's most interesting about AI, or maybe machine learning would be a better way to put it, is that when we're doing this kind of analysis, it is adaptive. So it will, as the situation changes, the AI will change to adapt as the patterns in what fraudsters, paper mills, for example, are doing. So this is quite nice. This is actually a publisher's output we're looking at here. And the red dots tell us where we think there are problems. And the publisher can just use this as an interactive tool. They can actually explore this. They can hover over the data points, get context, see which journals are being targeted, which subject areas, and perhaps which authors are doing the targeting. This one is particularly interesting because since doing this analysis, this publisher has had a number of mass retractions, particularly from one of these red areas that you see on the map. The other thing that we do, which isn't strictly AI, is network analysis. Network analysis and AI are not the best of friends if you're doing data analysis, but actually they do increasingly work together. The great thing about network analysis is that this gives us context. And the thing to remember with fraud detection is that fraud is intentionally hidden. There's no reason to expect that if a paper is fraudulent, that necessarily the evidence is inside the paper to be found. And actually, this goes back to generative AI, which is that generative AI might make it easier to make a fake paper, but it has always been the case that a fraudster has had control over content. The great thing about network analysis is that it shows us context. It shows us the other things that an article is connected to. So if an article connects a lot to other articles where we find problems, well, that tells us that the chance of there being a problem here is higher. Big lot of work went into building all of these tools. The results speak for themselves. We've got the best estimate for the scale of the problem. We predicted the Hindawi retractions, the Chinese Academy of Sciences early warning lists, Web of Science delistings, and put simply, publishers use the tool. It gives them alerts. Those alerts help them guide peer review, and that leads to the alert rate going down. We boil all of that analysis down to a very simple alert rating. And this is quite an important point. This is all that you need. This is all that you need to deal with the problem. Because there's one piece of advice that we give out, which is get good referees. And the reason we give that out is that when we have run this tool on publishers' data from before they were using the tool, we find that the red alerts, the rejection rate for those is much higher than it is for green alerts. And that's across dozens of publishers at this stage. So we categorically know that peer review works as a way of dealing with research fraud, and that's on its own. With a tool like this, we can help to guide it. But sort of going back to echoing what other people have said already, the human in the loop is the critical part. We should not ever automate judgment about individuals, especially with something this sensitive. So what we say is that, when there's an alert, the key thing is to get good referees, but we might actually be able to save even more time by simply running through a checklist of suitability criteria. Most publishers have those. They tend to be different for different publishers, but we can actually cover a lot of that ground very quickly with oversight. So we integrate into all of the large peer review systems, but also a growing number. So whatever peer review system you're using, we're probably going to be there pretty soon if we're not there now. What you get in there is a link that'll take you through to oversight, and that will give you a report on the article. I can tell just from looking at this that I do not want to review this article, because we haven't just found stuff on the article itself, we found stuff on a huge number of its references. And also, those references share authors. So it turns out that not only do they share authors with each other, they share authors with the article itself. So there's a high rate of self-citation on this article, and we're finding a lot of stuff in the author's histories. So this is just one image that tells me enough, because I know the tools very well, that I can make that judgment. But it is worth having that human there to make that judgment and also investigate these different things should they need to the extent that they need to. So here we can look at the items we're finding in authors' histories. In this case, we have a finding from a sleuth from Smut Clyde. So this is actually freely available. This is something you can go and look at Smut Clyde's work, and you can see what he has flagged on this. So that's an independent source of data that's also arriving at the conclusion that there is an issue with this article. Then we can look at the author histories just as a list. We just look at everything that's in the author's ORCID records. And we find a few interesting things here. Sometimes we will find high relevance articles. That can be a sign of salami, can also be a sign of templating, which is something that's consistent with paper mill usage. Occasionally we'll find very highly irrelevant articles in an author's history, which again can be a sign of paper mill usage, but there are also other good reasons for that, which is, again, if we want to make that judgment, the human has to be in the loop to say, okay, this author's done a lot of irrelevant work in the past, but that's because they switched fields or they're now doing interdisciplinary work. That's all fine. Sometimes, though, it can be a little bit of a flag to say we need to look into this a bit more. Maybe this author works in one field and then they've just bought a paper in another field. Then we have reference list. The reference list is just the same as the author history. Again, when we see very high relevance ratings here, that can be a sign of a lot of templating being used. But again, a human being should go and look and check. Low relevance references can be a sign of somebody purchasing references, but again, still needs a human being to go and check and make an informed judgment. And then we've got these thumbs up, thumbs down buttons. So what this does is it means that you can give us feedback. So if you find something that you don't agree with, you can put your feedback in here. That will then feed through to our data analysis and our training process, meaning that if you ever see any errors, we will correct for those. And you actually don't have to do that. That is completely optional. It does help, but we will actually do that adaptive process automatically. So then we can go and look at a whole journal, and we can see what does the journal submission feed look like. We can see what do the journal's publications look like. This journal has had a bad problem at one point in the past, but they dealt with the problem, and now things are looking a lot better. Then we can look at a publisher, similar kind of deal with this publisher. They had a big problem in the past. They dealt with it, and the alert rate has come down as a result. So oversight has a lot of features. We can see these detailed article level reports with individual findings on them. Then we have journal level reporting, publisher level oversight, and we can even go to the full industry level. So we're tracking every ISSN in OpenAlex over the last decade. About 30-something million articles that we've analyzed for that. So let's talk a bit about responsible AI. So I said that we have this adaptive system, and that's all governed by a data processing agreement, which means that publishers have control over their data. It's important to think about transparency and accountability together. We often talk about transparency as a good thing, and it is a good thing. Our business is built on open metadata. But simply putting data out isn't necessarily the responsible way to handle it. The majority of alerts that we find are in open access journals. Reasons for that are nuanced. I've written about that in my blog. The other thing is sensitivity. We have confidentiality, legal requirements, and risks around harming individuals that we have to take into account when we are using data like this. And so it's about balance. It's about balancing the interests of people and of organizations. So for publishers, we have to think a lot about confidentiality. Publishers do not want any of their data being used in any Gen AI system, and we don't use any Gen AI systems. Publishers are very careful about IP, very much so at the moment. And again, that goes back to Gen AI, but also to just generally managing their business. And then there's reputational risk, which is really serious. We can estimate the costs in terms of time for dealing with a problem like this. In terms of reputation, it is very, very hard to get that right. Institutions have all the same concerns. They approach them slightly differently, but very much the same. Researchers, actually, again, it's all the same stuff. They're very concerned about IP, and they're very concerned about reputation. Fraudsters, funnily enough, are actually one of our key considerations. What we want is a system that even if somebody has done something wrong, they feel as though they are being treated fairly. And that's very important to us, because if we have a system like that, we know that we are treating everyone fairly. So we do actually think a lot about the interests of individuals, even if they have done something wrong, because there could be an explanation and there could be scope for forgiveness, but also it's not for us to make that judgment. So modern AI tools are powerful and they've yet to test their limits. There's a lot of opportunity, a lot of interesting stuff happening. I think the human is responsible. That's fundamental. It's never going away. And we've always insisted that there should be a human in the loop all the time. The data is sensitive. We have to put responsibility first. It doesn't mean we shouldn't be transparent and we shouldn't be accountable, but responsibility really has to come first. Significant legal risks around responsible use of AI. And we have to understand that fraudsters will misuse evidence. If we put data out and it shows how we catch them, they will use that. We know that. That's everything. Thank you.
Adam, thank you so much for that. And again, we'll take questions at the end, but that was fantastic and great to hear the human in the loop from a company with AI-powered tools. So that's wonderful to hear. So we'll come on and talk further about that. For the moment, Adam, thank you. I'll hand over now to our final speaker, Dr. Lee. Welcome.
Rick, I think you're on mute.
Hey, hello, sorry. Yeah, I'm Rick. I'm from World Scientific Publishing. I've been in the publishing industry close to 30 years, academic publishing. And but today my presentation is slightly different from the previous speaker, because the previous speaker really focusing on journal publishing, on all the different issues around the publishing. But I try to approach it from a slightly different angle, because now I'm also managing the company in a way I need to look at different aspects of AI, how AI actually impact the corporation and how we adopt AI as a whole. Of course, we are a publishing house. Definitely that is part of the things that will get involved. And my agenda, I will talk about three main items. The first one is talk about our strategy to approach how to use AI integration. I mean, now we are talking about more from the whole company as a whole, how we integrate AI, and what are the operational challenges and the opportunities when we adopt all these new technologies. And at the end, I will cover some of the regional perspectives on how AI are being implemented, especially in the Asia market. First of all, I mean, from a publisher's point of view, when we get into new technology, in this case, actually AI, there are a few things we need to make sure we are moving along in the right path. First of all, we have to make sure whatever this new AI technology, especially this is evolving almost every day. So, but we have to make sure it aligns with our mission as a publisher. Okay, how we align with our goals. And when we adopt such a technology, one of the key things we need to ensure we have the right people being trained on these new technologies. So what are the implications of these new technologies? And sometimes it's easy to say that to get the people to understand what's happening. And this is something we need to develop on the go. And of course, previous speakers bring up all the issues related to AI, especially on the ethical side. And that's why we also need to make sure when we implement all these new technologies in our products, in our day-to-day work, we have to make sure we are doing it in a responsible way. And this involves a lot of education within the company. And of course, once we have this new technology, investment is important. As a company, all this new technology, it will involve a lot of investment in terms of finance side, in terms of people, in terms of infrastructure. There are many things we need to take into account. And at the end of the day, is all this new, especially in AI, are they giving us any advantage, how we position ourselves in the market, especially in this case, in our publishing market. So these are some of the things when we are working with AI, always at the back of our mind, we have to think about this. So just now, actually, Martin mentioned quite a number of things that these are all the good things that actually happening, and we see it happening. And in fact, I've been traveling to China for quite a few times in the last few months, every time at least a week or so. And I see a lot of things happening internally, but also what I see in China. Of course, with the new AI integration, there are a lot of new good things coming up. Like now you have all this AI-powered semantic search, helping researchers to do deep research. And just now mentioned about all the manuscript screening, how to improve how to check the quality, how to do the integrity check, like Adam mentioned, and language enhancement. That's particularly important for non-English speaking countries' authors. And that actually has been around. And just now, when Jonathan mentioned, and in fact, there are a lot of tools available for this translation. And we as a publisher already tried some of things and even produce product books of that. And we've been, there are also other elements that actually helping us to work better, in the sense is it helps to to generate new contents. For example, now our marketing people are actually looking at our books, and then they generate marketing material from the content. In the old days, they need to write, they need to read through the whole book, but now with the new technologies, they can come up with a more precise marketing material. And at the same time, actually, in the workflow, we also can easily have tools to generate metadata and so on. And most interesting, I would say, in the last couple of months, actually since end of last year, we've been approached by some tech company to help us to create new products. And these products actually working with our author, there are some already we are starting to publish. For example, some AI assistant for books. That means, and we are going to launch a courseware based on a book and using AI. So it's a very different way of learning. And I find that this is something, as a publisher, we are very happy to see something like that in the market. Okay, these are the integration. What are the challenges? These are something I think is ongoing. Some are already being addressed, but some are still very difficult to deal with. For example, when we starting to work on AI in our journal publishing, our book publishing, I mean, infrastructure is one of the key problems. For example, just now mentioned about all this integrity check. Then depending on our submission system, is it up to date that can easily integrate some of all these new technologies to do all this integrity check? So it's the integration issue because of the infrastructure, legacy infrastructure. and the right people to do it. Because a lot of times we find that not easy to get anyone to understand the implication. For example, I think Adam just now present all this very useful information, but is it anyone for example, as an editor, they can easily grasp the idea what all these numbers means and how are these being affected us. So there are a lot of gaps that we need to fill to make sure are correct. And of course, always the issue is the privacy, ethical and legal concern. And then I think Martin and also Jonathan mentioned quite a number of all these problems, and this always happening, and this we need to look into it. The next one is cost and return of investment uncertainty. Now we are paying a lot of all these additional costs to put, for example, in the journal publishing, some of all these integrity checks, some of all these new ideas, we need to invest. But that is something that in the past we don't have to worry about. But now we have to think about, once we invest this kind of new technologies, what is the return? Of course, we can say that, yeah, our content will be more secure. We have to make sure we are not publishing something so lousy, and then, yeah, all these integrity issues are being taken care of. But that is also something we need to think about. And the last, but frankly speaking, is one of the most difficult problems is the internal resistance. There's still a lot of cultural barriers, and we need to, I'm sure when we look at the news, there are a lot of people worried about AI replacing their jobs. And actually it's happening everywhere. It's happening even in our publishing line. So everyone is worried about it. And we understand the issue. And that's why we are thinking, we have been trying our best to address this in a proper way and try to train people. Actually, our approach is to rescale our colleagues in order to do the work. The editor need to learn something new in the old days, like the production people, we have a lot of people doing production. But now, because of all this AI automation and so on, I mean, do we still need so many people? So what are they going to do? Are they going to lose their job? So these are some of the things actually we need to address. And sometimes in order to implement a new technologies, this is one of the key things we need to look into, because that is quite a sensitive, and we have to be very mindful how our colleagues react on these new technologies. But on the other hand, actually, I find that my recent travel helped me to look into more on the positive side. I see that there are a lot of opportunities in adopting AI in our publishing line. For example, just now we mentioned about all these from submission to publication, you streamline the operations. Now there are more and more tools to help us to do that. And there are ways to help us to actually optimize our operations, our workflows. The third one, actually, just now Jonathan mentioned, actually now, because of AI, the translation, for example, is making a big impact to us. When I was in China the last couple of months, I've been being approached by quite a number of companies, tech company providing translation services. And actually it also provide opportunities for us. In the old days, for example, we are, as you know, Well Scientific also published quite a number of books, academic STM books. And every time when we want to buy the rights from Chinese to, say, to English, and we do translation. And we also translate from German to English. And in the old days, we need translator, and which costs a lot of money and takes a lot of time. But now with the AI, we've been testing, actually since last year, we've been testing different tools to do it. And there are some tools are better than the others. And now we see that actually they are everywhere. Some are equally good. And their company actually specifically provides such a service. Of course, we always ensure, or after the translation, someone have to make sure the translated content is correct and it really replicate what is meant in the original content. And that is actually the human side. And this is something is happening, but that is actually the last step of the whole thing. Yeah. And we also mentioned about new revenue stream. Actually, there are. I mean, Martin mentioned quite a number of big deals by all these big publishers, and it's happening to us. But in fact, I also see a change in the type of request from this tech company, and I find that is moving along in a very different and interesting directions. What Martin mentioned are all these big deals. That means the tech company try to acquire a lot of content and to build the LLM models, the foundation models. But now more and more we see that actually they are looking for specific type of contents, very specific in terms of subject areas, specific in terms of content type. For example, people looking for contents like books with question and answers for training. There are different types of content. They are even looking for some artistic type of books. Yeah, we have a lot of graphics and so on. So it seems that there's still a lot of opportunity for publishers, for authors to provide such content. And from the corporate point of view, AI help us to actually make our decision more objective with data-driven decision making, because nowadays you can actually put all your finance. For example, actually, when I talk to my founder, I mean, they just say use the spreadsheet, the P&L. I mean, you can easily get a good insight just from the P&L with an AI model. So it's happening. It's not something we said that it is still thinking, but it's actually happening. And last but not least is the AI in day-to-day office operation. I mean, in our admin, in our recruitment, in our accounts, in our customer service, they are also trying to look into how to employ AI in the law.
Madam, well done.
I want to touch on something on the Asia Pacific, but before that, actually yesterday I attended a webinar by Microsoft and also IDC. And then I see one slide, and this slide is actually very interesting comparison between the Asia Pacific, Japan, and the rest of the world on AI adoption. That's why I brought the slide and then share with everyone. Because I do feel that there are a big difference of approaching AI between the East and the West. And you can see that actually APJ, Asia Pacific and Japan, actually in terms of putting AI spending within the corporation is actually higher than EMBA in Europe. And the most interesting part actually is in the middle. They interview a number of corporations in Asia Pacific and Japan. Last year, they find in general there are 65 use cases using generative AI, and they predict this year is 97. What I'm trying to say is actually in Asia Pacific, I can see that actually within the government in Singapore, within other nearby countries, in particular China, they embrace AI much more openly than the Western country. Singapore actually has one of the most open copyright law to allow even researcher to use the content for LLM training. They use text and data mining, but the wording actually can allow up to text and data mining. So I would say that there is one of the major difference between the East and the West. But let me focus just on Singapore and China. And Singapore has been, government has been pushing for AI quite strong. And now they have the National AI Strategy 2.0. And what they are trying to position, they try to position Singapore as a leader in AI, focusing on both domestic and global impact, but emphasizing on public goods. That means to help to use AI in different aspects. within the public goods. I mean, now we see that some of our the apps that we use, all these are behind their AI and try to improve the life of the people in the country. So, but China is different. When I get this actually from a survey, and actually it's a very interesting and they aims for a global AI leadership in 2030. But I would say that actually they are already near the top in some ways, and they have invested a lot in the R&D, infrastructure, and talent development. And of course, they have a very comprehensive regulation and ethic framework. But more interesting, they actually the global engagement in the digital Silk Road and the military integration. That is something quite interesting, because when I was in the latest Beijing Book Fair, I can see that actually a lot of publication within the government, military, and then talk about how AI are being used. So these are some of the differences I can see between the East and the West. This is my last slide. I wanted some of the interesting activities I see. For example, just now I know that there are some people say, yeah, they will never allow LLM ebook. But last year I really start hearing when I was in China, they are doing AI generated book. And in fact, there was a book already published in this year in UK. It's between a company in China and Springer Nature. This book is called AI for Rock Dynamics. It's an open access book. It's actually an AI LLM powered book. It's already up there. So it's happening. And this year, this CPNIEC, this is an import-export company. You just imagine a publishing import-export company spin off an AI company and then having their own LLM model called Lufa AI Studio. So they presented in the PubTech 2025 in Beijing. And Singapore last month, I think it was June, they have the largest AI event with over 7,000 participants. And coming up, I know that in Shanghai, there is another China ASEAN AI Forum. What I'm trying to say is the Asian way of adopting AI in publishing and also in other areas is a little bit different from the West. One of the main reasons is most of them are government-led AI initiatives. And in fact, I was talking to a government agency just yesterday. They introduced us a grant for us to implement AI within the company. These are the things I'm not so sure in the West. Do they have a lot of all these government-led AI initiatives and with support for small, medium-sized enterprise? So this is something, and China is doing much bigger, I would say. But Singapore is trying to make sure, yeah, we are there. So I think I will just stop here. Thank you very much. Yeah, we can entertain questions later on. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Rick. And that's a really insightful view from a very deep dive view from your publishing company perspective in Asia and in Singapore. So thank you for that. We've covered a lot, so much so we've got 11 minutes left for some questions. So we've just opened it up now for some questions and maybe questions for Adam and Rick, but for the panel.
Sorry, Martin, if I can jump the queue a little bit. I just want to
Go ahead,
address
Jonathan. Yeah,
this question from Aisha in the chat, about how AI tools and scholarly publishing can be designed or improved to better support non-native English speakers, because you spend a lot of time crafting what you want to say, and then suddenly an AI detection system flags it as AI generated, even though you spend hours writing it yourself. And I think the challenge here is that because AI or Adam, please jump in and correct me if I'm wrong, but the AI detection systems work on, it's statistical probability, right? What's expected, the most likely word to happen next. And if you're not a native speaker, you learn a language in a very structured way. So there's certain words that come next, and that's how it gets flagged by an AI detection system. So you can actually then ask AI to edit your writing to make it sound like you're a more native English speaker, and that will actually bypass the AI detection flagging. So it's an interesting loophole that we discussed in one of the ISMAP situations, but just wanted to put that out there first. Maybe Adam, if you want to comment on that.
Yeah, so I guess it's worth saying that we've tried this a little bit, and we've had some varying results with different methods. One of the things that actually has worked very well has been finding words, characters, and n-grams, which is sort of pairs of words or 3 words in a row, that are unusually common in the output of particular Gen AI systems, which is actually, it should be a bad way of doing it, because there should be a lot of randomness in how those words are generated. But it turns out this way works quite well. And if we're going to put something out, it might be based on something like that. So certainly that has worked. And there are methods that will work on the basis of trying to work out stochastically what is the next word going to be if this is a predicted piece of text. Those seem to work less well, but potentially in tandem with other approaches, you end up with the best thing. But I think this whole thing about Gen AI is that it seems to be missing the point. Like the point is this legitimate science that is reproducible? And how it was written is not the important thing. The important thing is it reproducible science? But that's a difficult question to answer in peer review, because actually peer review has never really been designed to do that. It's always been designed to sort of say, get the opinion of an expert. Does the expert think that this is reasonable? And usually it's not a situation where they've actually reproduced the result. And I think that's really the fundamental problem, that we don't have a peer review system that does that. Sorry, kind of a long answer to your question.
Again, it's a great perspective, Adam. And you talked about applying your technology and your AI powered tools, and still coming away knowing that peer review works as a principle, which is really, really important, keeping the human in the loop. So we shouldn't miss that. And then it's the cultural aspects for me today. This is like really coming to the front of my perspective, when sometimes you from a Western perspective, you go down a bit of a rabbit hole in the applications of Gen AI, understanding Jonathan's perspective and Rick's perspective has been really, really enlightening, I think, for many of us that sometimes don't take that into account. So would we, Laihor, shall we take your question, please? You have your hand up.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Martin, for organizing this webinar. I'm so excited. I'm Laihor from Cambodia. Normally I join webinars organized by ACSE. And, today I'm so excited to hear about AI is allowed for scholarly publishing if you use it responsibly. And
yes,
we can avoid it. We cannot avoid it because everyone uses AI. Even I use AI a lot. So I have 2 quick questions. The first one, I want to know, based on your, recommendation, what is a good way to persuade researchers to use AI responsibly? This is my first question. And the second one is about when AI aided papers or manuscripts are detected, what is your measure? Or can you give a researcher or an author a second chance to submit their manuscript for review? Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Laihor. So So maybe to your first question, who would like to take that in terms of encouraging the responsible use of AI amongst authors? Rick, do you have a perspective on that?
Yes, I think nowadays we have to accept the fact that actually everyone have to know AI. I was even told university first year level, doesn't matter what subject, you have to take a course of AI in Singapore university. So the AI is here. But how to use it responsibly is actually how you use it. You use it for what? You use it for research, or you use it to, I think actually it does help. I mean, last time in the old days, I remember I saw one product was shown during the PubTech in China, is doing the literature survey. Remember when you write a thesis, or you spend months to go through hundreds of papers. But now there are tools actually help. In terms of months, they do it within a day or two. Go through all the literatures that is relevant and then summarize sum up to you. And that is how actually we see that is helping. And their company actually launched a product like that in China. Okay, so in terms of presenting, I think just now, I think Martin and then also Adam and Jonathan mentioned, I think is when you use it, you have to tell people how you use it. You use it to correct language. I don't see any different from Grammarly or other tools that you help you to change. And I mean, in the old days, I still remember my time when I was doing my research in US. After I written my research article, I passed to my colleagues, my advisor, to go through and help me to correct the language. I don't see any difference using a tool instead of asking a human being. But the most important thing is, whatever you, a lot of times, whatever you write, you have to make sure at least you believe that is true. You believe that is true. That means you need to verify. For example, a lot of AI hallucination is coming from all these wrong references, and you have to really check yourself. And that is actually how is your attitude of using AI. And of course, after you use it, you have to tell people how you use it, and so that people make a decision. And you cannot just come up with a statistical answer and say, oh, AI tell me this. There's no way. You have to do your experiment in order to get that answer. It's not because of the AI give you a graph, you just use it just like that. I think that is the fundamental.
I think that the second part of the question may be related to, again, authors whose first language is not English, making responsible use of AI in creating an academic or research article, but yet being rejected because the publisher's tool detects generative AI use, and how again, is that compounding and conflating existing biases against non-English language authors? How do we solve that?
So I think that's a big education piece around that, because a lot of what we talk about, comes again from a very maybe skewed perspective, or there's one kind of overarching perspective on this, and it's not that it should always flow in that direction. I think a lot of the work that some of my peers and I have been doing is to communicate, and kind of educate in the reverse direction, rather to say, that we talk about diversity so much, but this is true diversity in, I think, language and in cultures, and there is a better need to understand that. Otherwise, I think a lot of the discussion is mere lip service if you're not going to acknowledge that English is not a first language for everyone, and not everyone can write to perhaps the level that you might expect. So you need to be a bit more understanding, and perhaps provide more tools or framework, or find some way to meet everyone in the middle. But the first step is always having this discussion and just raising awareness about it.
Yeah, which again, we unfortunately we're running out of time, which leads me to look to Maryam and to ACSE and say we probably need another session where we explore this in more detail, because I think the cultural aspects are missing from many of the discussions that we see. So I think it's been hugely important we've had that discussion today. So maybe just going around the screen just to finish up with just a key message from each of the speakers, just to finish off. I think that would be nice. So maybe Adam, what did you have a final leaving thought for our attendees today?
I think it would be, again, just repeating that point about the necessity of having a human in the loop. And we've always insisted on that. It's sort of funny because people always ask me, you're doing these automated tools, therefore you're not advocating human in the loop, but no, you absolutely are. And I think that also that point that Jonathan just made about the responsible party. It's the human that is the one who is responsible for what they put in, and that's going to be the case. Sorry.
That's okay.
So the human's always going to be the responsible party. So it's always going to come down to that. The person who's putting something down on paper, they are responsible for what they're putting down. Even if the AI has done it, they have to be the one taking responsibility.
Great, thank you. And Rick?
Okay, I think one thing I want to say is AI is here to stay. AI will be getting better and better. They will more closer to more trying to mimic what we are doing every day. I will imagine in the future, it's very difficult to detect this is from AI or not from AI, getting harder and harder. But at the end of the day, we are human beings. So what we do, we are answerable by ourselves. So at the end, what you publish, what you do, at the end is we are answerable. It's not the AI. So make sure whatever we do, we just follow our heart, and that is a responsible way of doing it.
Thank you, Rick. And Jonathan?
I think just reminding everyone that we have a voice, we have a say in AI. We should not just be following the maybe perhaps a global narrative, but we should be providing our own narrative as well, and something that is relevant to us. So don't feel like you just have to follow, but speak up, share your stories, share your perspectives, because I think that's how everyone learns.
Thanks, Jonathan. Just from my perspective, again, it's been incredibly important just to hear from the Asia Pacific perspective and consider the cultural challenges, but reinforcing again that we collectively have an opportunity to have influence by having these discussions. I think the mere fact we're having these discussions today is great. It helps us move forward, helps us share experiences. And so, again, I'm looking to ACSE to find the next opportunity where we can do that together. But for the moment, thank you, Rick, Jonathan, Adam. Thank you very much, Maryam, for moderating. And I'll just hand it back to you just to finish finally. And thank you all for our participants and questions coming through.
Thank you so much, Martin, and to all of the panelists for the valuable insights that you shared today, and to everyone joining us today in the audience for connecting us and contributing your questions and your reflections from diverse perspective. And it's very much clear that from this discussion that although AI offers powerful opportunities for innovation in scholarly publishing, it also demands thoughtful dialogues, ethical considerations, and shared responsibility across the global publishing ecosystem that we discussed today. So at the Asian Council of Science Editors, we believe that creating such sort of spaces that you enjoy, where complex topics are unpacked, experiences are exchanged in a way, and the community moves forward from informed to maybe a better prepared version to induce with the changes that we see in the publishing landscape. So whether you are working in editorial roles, policy, technology, or research itself, we hope that today's webinar and the session must have added something meaningful to your perspective. To wrap up, I would like to extend a special thanks to Martin for putting down all of the webinar agenda and three excellent speakers from industry for leading today's session with such clarity, and to all of the speakers, Jonathan Lee, Adam Day, and Rick Lee, for their time and expertise. As always, we encourage you to stay connected with ACSE, and we continue to curate content and conversation that matter across Asia and beyond. And not finishing here, we will be sharing the recording and post-webinar resources soon on our official website, and you will get a link via email through that. And until then, thank you once again, and we look forward to welcoming you all to our next session, next webinar very soon. Take care and goodbye for now.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.